Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of a knife that is pretty uniquely a Spyderco, and that is the Spyderco Stretch here. First, the size comparison. Here is your Spyderco PM2, your Spyderco Sleesh Bowie, your Spyderco Dragonfly 2, which is in the same steel, ZDP 189, and your Ontario Rat 2. The Delica is on loan at the moment, so don't have that to compare, but nonetheless, it's much bigger than the Delica. And like I said, the comparison with the PM2 kind of tells it all. And I want to thank my buddy Jim for sending this along. Very nice to check it out. And this had been on my list for a while. So let's go ahead and jump on into the good, the bad, and the ugly, as always. So good here. First and foremost, the ergonomics on this are just really great because it's got the finger choil, which makes it very hard to slide out of your hands. Got good jumping here and here. So even at this point in the grip, it's really secure. Then when you wrap the rest of your hand around it, because the handle's nice and thick, it's just beautifully contoured for you to do that. So when this is in my hand, it's not coming out of my hand, period. Between the grippy FRN and the just generalized shape of it, it's really locked on into the hand. So this is definitely I work in a Vaseline factory sort of knife. You will have a grip on this come hell or high water or any other sort of slippery substance. So there you go. I also do very much like a finger choil. I know that's a personal thing, but for me, I like the Spydercos, like the PM2, and the other brands that do include that. So that's good. There is plenty of blade in this knife here. I mean, a lot of blade. Slightly more blade than the Spyderco PM2 if you compare them side by side. Just a little tiny bit more. And that's good. It's got a nice full flat grind for slicing, and the stock thickness on the steel isn't as thick as your PM2, which makes it actually a very reasonably capable slicer. So ZDP, this is a ZDP 189 model here. They've sold it in other kinds. I think at the moment ZDP is the only one that's available, but I'm sure they're going to be phasing in new ones. I think there was HAP 40 sometime back. But ZDP is one heck of a steel. It takes a really good edge, and it holds it for a long time. It's not the toughest steel in the world, which means that, this is not what I would be using for, batoning in the wilderness or anything where you have the opportunity to chip the knife. But that said, for any kind of everyday carry task, it's going to be more than adequate, and I don't see that being a factor. So the steel is just great. Another thing I'll say is that this is a fairly heavy blade, and the heavy blades go really nicely with backlocks. It makes it a lot easier to do things like you can actually flick this guy out with your thumb, which is unusual for some of Spyderco's backlocks. And it feels very nice to operate because it's got this nice big heavy blade with a solid Spyderco backlock. Speaking of which, solid is another thing this knife's got going in spades, absolutely, because it is a backlock, and backlocks are very secure, and Spyderco makes them well. And there's not, the tolerances are good. This is not really going anywhere. It also has full steel liners inside there, I hope you can see. And, just on the whole, this feels like a great, powerful tool in the hand. I'm a big fan of it in that particular way. Very, very solid. I do, the FRN handles, it's fiberglass reinforced nylon. It's a little plasticky, but I still don't mind it in the least, compared to some materials that some people use. And honestly, even compared to just plain G10, I really do like it, and the texturing Spyderco does is not to be ignored. It really does make this knife considerably more secure in the hand. It does use a conventional Spyderco clip, which means that you can swap it out for a deep carry clip if you'd like. I'll try and remember to link to the review for this deep carry clip, but, it's a nice thing. And, overall, there's just a lot to like here. It feels very good in the hand, and there's a whole lot of blade. So, yeah, that's your good. Great ergos, great blade, great steel on this guy, and it's just a very solid knife. Let's jump into your bad. Okay, there are a couple of bad things. First off, the blade shape leaves me a little bit cold for a lot of EDC cutting tasks because of this. When you put the knife down, your fingers in this grip contact way before the knife blade, and especially with the finger choil here, it's very noticeable. Let's use the side of the PM2 as a straight edge here, so you can see what I'm talking about from above. Here we go. If you just make a cut like this whole portion of the blade is never contacting the surface you're cutting on. So you can do food prep, but you really need to make draw cuts. It's not a problem if you're doing the kind of cutting like you stab into a bag of sand to open it up and pour it out. That's going to be not a problem here. although ZDP may not be the best choice for that particular task. But nonetheless, you know, it's okay, but it leaves me a little bit cold. And I, in many ways, do prefer the more conventional kind of leafy blade here. I can see that it gets you a little bit less size in the pocket because there's not this extra bit. But I don't know. I'm not a huge fan there. It was better on the UKPK when I had that. There is no sharpening choil here, which is a big deal because you've got this big old chunk of metal here. There we go. Which really it's hard to get up in there with sharpening stones, particularly sharpening systems. So I would have liked them to give me a little bit of a choil, or at least make this surface a little bit more flush with the edge. I know that's a bit of a safety measure, but I don't know. So this is going to be a real pain to sharpen, in addition to the fact that ZDP itself is a bit of a pain to sharpen. The jimping here is a little bit on the sharper side, but that's okay. I'm not really concerned because that adds a lot of texturability and grabbability to it here. The clip is painted, which I'm always going to knock because as this clip gets scratched up, it's going to get or more scratched up visibly. But like I said, you can always swap it for a third-party clip or even just sand down this one to get the bare metal. That's what I did on my Delic, and I love it. And then finally, although I talk about the fact this is very solid, I'm a little concerned about the fragility of the tip on the end here. That's not a very thick chunk of metal, and given that's true for a lot of Spydercos, but given that this is thinner stock and that it's ZDP, I don't know. So that's your bad. The blade shape is not just stellar to me. There's no sharpening choil. The clip is painted, and the tip is a little bit vulnerable. Let's jump into your ugly. So, two ugly things. First, that it's a very large knife. The blade is exactly 3.5 inches of sharpened edge, but, you know, the handle itself is very large as well. If you take a look at it, I mean, it's good in that it fills the hand, but at the same time, if you shut the blade, you can see that there's no blade inside your lanyard hole here, which means that the blade is actually only taken up, yay much of the inside of this handle. Everything else is mechanism and air, and FRN. And so, in the pocket, it's big. It's not huge. It's not completely out of line. I didn't mind carrying it. And this surface here gives your hand a nice ramp to get past it into your pocket. But at the same time, it's a lot bigger than I expected it to be. It's also fairly heavy in the grand scheme of FRN knives. You look at this and you think, oh, FRN must be pretty light. But this is actually coming in at 3.24 ounces. To give you a point of comparison, your PM2 here is 3.8. So, 0.6 ounces is the difference between the Stretch and the PM2. Your Sleesh buoy, which is all titanium, is 4.3. But still, there's a whole lot of weight going on here. Again, it's not hard to carry, but that really did jump out at me, and it's a little bit on the ugly side to me. This is a big, big knife, and it's a heavy one, even for being FRN. So let's jump into the final conclusion. And, okay, back up. It's not that ugly in the grand scheme of things. If you're okay with bigger, heavy knives, it's just fine. But for me, at least, it caught me off guard, and I think that's why it's ugly. So I've now refilmed my final conclusion section like 5 times, and that probably shows you that I'm a little bit conflicted on this guy. I mean, practically speaking, it's a very, very good knife. It's got great ergonomics, it's got a great steel, the materials are good, the construction is solid, there's a lot to like here. But at the same time, it's a bit big, and the blade shape just isn't ideal for a lot of the tasks, at least that I do. And so, this is one of those where it's a very, very fine knife. And at $109, you're not doing bad at all here. If you're looking at the Stretch, you're in love with the design and you want to buy one, buy one. You're not going to be unhappy with it. But at the same time, for me, for the Nick, I got a lot of other options that are probably going to beat this guy into my pocket any day of the week. For instance, if I'd like to carry a beefy Spyderco, I'd probably go to the PM2. I like the blade shape a little bit more on it. And even though it's slightly larger in the pocket, mostly due to your oversized lanyard tube here, the PM2 is just a little bit more appealing to me. The thickness is about the same. The pocketability is about the same. Much improved with the deep carry clip. But, for me, the PM2 would win. Or the Sleesh buoy, which is about the same size in the pocket. Or even the ZT0562CF is another one that would probably win out over the Stretch. But again, that's not quite fair because the PM2s are $130, maybe 119 depending where you get it these days. Your Sleesh Bowie's 300 and your ZT-05 is 260. I didn't even bother with the numbers. So, I don't know. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with this knife. Did it warm my heart? Am I calling it a gem? No, that'd be a bit of a stretch. But, you know, it didn't quite hit gem for me, but it's solid. And so I guess that's where I'm going to leave it, is the Spyderco Stretch is solid in pretty much every way. If you like it for some reason, if you want as much blade shape as you can get in an FRN Spyderco, and you're in a 3.5 legal area, this is probably where you're going to go. But if you're just looking for a good Spyderco, there are a lot of really good options. And check out some of the other reviews for things that, you know, just had a little bit more panache and called my name just a little bit louder. I hope this has been interesting to you. Thanks again, Jim, for sending this along. And everybody else, have yourselves a wonderful rest of the day.